Welcome back. Who wouldn't want to protect our children from those who would seek them out online? As you just saw, Shane Coyle is using his uncanny ability to sound like a teenage girl to do just that, but he is not a police officer. He doesn't work in law enforcement, and it is unclear whether, even if he turns his evidence over to authorities, whether it would be admissible in a court of law. And joining us for more is Shane Coyle, Greg Arnold, professor of criminal justice at State College of Florida, and Kurt Lavarello, executive director of the School Safety Advocacy Council and the 28-year police veteran. Gentlemen, welcome to you all. Ringers off on that phone, Shane.
Leave it up to the guy with ADHD, right?
Right. Shane, how did you get the idea to do this?
Now, to do the voices or to do the actual
Both.
decoy stuff? Well, the voices came at an early age. I used to cut class all the time. I apologize, guys. I used to cut class all the time. And my teacher says to me one day, Shane, if you cut class one more time, I'm going to call your mom. Now, growing up in an Italian, Irish household, you're either going to get smacked or you're going to get yelled at, one or the other, or both, majority of the time. I didn't want mom getting a call, and mom works during the day. So I said, you know what? Okay, no problem. I'm not going to tell them that she's at work. They don't have her work number, surprisingly.
I see where this is going.
Yeah. Needless to say, the next day I cut class. Day after, they call home. I run off the bus. Phone's ringing, 3:30. Hello? Hi, Shane, it's your principal. I need to speak to your mother. I never did a voice in my life, but it just came to me like that. I'm like, hold on, here she is. Hey, Mom? Hello? Hello? Hi, who's this? Mom, it's my teacher. Be quiet. It's my teacher. Shut up, Shane. Hi, how are you? Hi, Mrs. Coyle. This is your son's principal. He's been cutting class just about every other day. Oh, that stupid little dummy. Well, no, I wouldn't call him stupid. Oh, no, we do. We call him stupid every single night. I made him feel real bad for me, like I'm getting yelled at. And
right.
Needless to say, it's how I started doing voices.
And you've been able to refine it so you are sounding
Absolutely.
like a young girl.
Yeah, I can sound like my dad, my mom, my grandmother. I mean, you name it.
Where did you get the idea to use the voice to hunt men who may be online seeking young girls?
And females as well. There's females that do it. Believe it or not, we haven't had one, but they do exist out there. Predatorial, nature is not of any sex whatsoever. It's defining just sickness in these people's heads. But how I got the idea was I have another page, it's called the Prank Call Mafia, Shane Coyle's Prank Call Mafia, where we prank call celebrities. And we prank call just individuals. And basically it's an ongoing live show on Facebook. Now, when we're live, there's a chat feed. And in that chat feed, I get to know my followers. I get to know them by first name basis and their screen name. And a lot of them, some of them straggle in there, 17, 16 years old, and they're younger. And I know who the younger ones are. And I also know who the older ones are. One of my older followers noticed one of my younger followers was making certain comments and started asking where she lived, and I'm noticing this, and I'm just seeing it from the outside looking in, and make a long story short, this guy, 56-year-old man, was trying to pretty much court and groom a 16-year-old girl, and she was giving the information. So I kind of grabbed a hold of it, and I said, you know what, hold on, let me do this, and I contacted him and seen what he was doing, and it just kind of sprung. And my daughter's also has apps on her phone,
right.
And I started taking a look at those and just seeing it's heavy.
While we have time in this segment, folks, you saw the story that we put together with Jess. What was your initial, Kurt, feeling when you saw it?
Well, in law enforcement, we appreciate when people get involved and help us meet our end goal, which is to put, as Shane said, some of these sick people behind bars, because that's where they belong. Unfortunately, when you're utilizing a strategy that is to shame the person, that's not going to make that person leave that shaming and suddenly be cured of his desire to be with little boys or little girls. So there's a sickness there. And so we like to see that these cases go through the criminal justice system, and the person not only winds up getting their sickness treated, but there's also a punishment that goes along with that through the system.
Greg, briefly, we saw NBC, Craig Larson, I believe, became really famous around the country for doing To Catch a Predator. Yeah. What's the difference, if there is any?
Well, the difference is you are taking it outside of the criminal justice system to a point. And at some point in that show, they brought in law enforcement and they cooperated with them. There was a lot of controversy about that and how far they would go to. There's a difference between enticing and entrapment. and there's things civilians can get away with, but may not be able to be used or by law enforcement or used in the court of law.
Right.
In that, and so you can start getting into a quagmire with the legalities.
All right, and we will be talking about that, but we are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. A local man on his own crusade to get pedophiles off the street. Good idea or not so much? Joining us for more is Shane Coyle, Greg Arnold, professor of criminal justice at State College of Florida, and Kurt Lavarello, executive director of the School Safety Advocacy Council. So, Shane, if you could explain briefly, once you get them to, how do you get them to agree to meet you someplace? How do you document it? And what's your goal once you get them there?
Well, I'll start from the latter end up. Ultimately, the goal is to have justice served. Ultimately, we would love if we were able to work hand in hand with police, but as these guys said, it's a whole nother animal, their end versus my end. But the ultimate goal being a conviction in a court, obviously. But the other goal, which in my opinion is just as important as putting them in jail, is the awareness. Having them put on the spot, having people like you, whoever else, it's a parent, if not even a parent, just somebody that has a love for children to know who these people are.
Are you recording the
Absolutely.
conversation? All right. I guess my first question about that, because as an investigative journalist,
Yes, sir.
we have done that a lot, but the law is different from state to state. What you could do, let's say, in New York or in the Northeast is different than what you could do in Florida. In Florida, you have to have two-party consent, meaning you have to tell the person that they're being recorded. Are you doing that?
Absolutely, yeah. The first thing, one of the first things that will come out of my mouth is that I'm recording you with either my camera guy or myself holding a camera. I'm recording you for your safety as well as my own, and I have you live on a social media network page. That said, they don't say anything negative, denying, I don't want you to do. There's your consent. Have I done them to where they haven't had consent? Absolutely, I have, and I've learned through trial and error. As you said, it is a two-party state, and it is a very fine line. In a public setting, though, such as a McDonald's or on the outside, a McDonald's or a local park, to my knowledge, you can record anything you want.
I believe it was either Kurt or Greg raised the point that when law enforcement does that, their objective is to make an arrest and get that person off the street. Shaming them alone, if you are a pedophile, is often not enough to dissuade you from doing it again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, it's not awareness to or shame to them. It's awareness to the other individuals that live in that area or have the ability to see who that person is. Because you can be, and I'm not, actually let me not use that analogy. Joe Fontenyachts can be a pedophile working at the local park or whatever, what have you. No one knows. No one knows except for his neighbors and the people that he's registered with.
I guess when Jess Dudrick, or a reporter, contacted the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, they were pretty vague about whether or not what you're handing over to them is going to result in a criminal prosecution.
Yeah, and it is, again, it's a very, very touchy subject. That now, if we get a person, now I've actually had these pedophile animals admit, yes, I'm here to meet a 16-year-old girl to engage in to engage in sexual activity. Even having that, it's very hard to get a conviction. It's very hard, but we still turn it over and make them aware. And majority, when we do turn stuff over, because we've heard to hand it to other law offices, not just Hillsborough. Well, Hillsborough's made it a point to say, look, we are not going to work with you, and I respect that wholeheartedly. I'm still going to do what I do. Because other than that, these pedophiles are sitting at home doing what they're doing, searching for 16-year-olds. I'm a father. I'm not a cop. I'm a father, and I make that known, too.
Kurt, as a 28-year police veteran, what's your initial reaction?
Well, I, too, am a father, and I want the person off the street as much as Shane does. One of the things that's so critically important when we look at it from a law enforcement perspective is the training that our law enforcement agencies here locally and across the country put into training these detectives to do these type of cases. So one of the things that often happens, and this type of activity is nothing new. It was actually very popular in the UK many years ago, and it's kind of taken shape here when perverted justice got involved here in the United States. But one of the things we like to do, make sure we do, is when we put the training programs together for our detectives, that we make sure we preserve all that evidentiary value of taking this person's phone and making sure, because oftentimes if we shame them and they run and they take off,
Yes.
they destroy the evidence. And that lessens our ability to get that conviction and put that person away, and then he's out there and can do it again. And therein lies the problem with some of this.
Greg, from an evidence point of view, is what Shane is turning over problematic?
Very problematic, and Kurt is right about the aspect. If they're publicly shamed, they run off, and first thing they do is start destroying evidence and so forth. And it gets into the problem again of how their conversations initiated, who initiated it, who said what first and things. This goes in all kind of proactive aspects, you know, from drug deals and stuff like that. And we don't have control of that. And at what point it becomes problematic that it goes from enticement to entrapment. And we lose control.
There's also the safety aspect for somebody
Yes.
like Shane or somebody who's doing these investigations, because a lot of the times they're carrying firearms. We've seen a number of suicides result from
Yes.
some of the cases like this. So the folks who are out there doing it, while doing it for a good cause and wanting to do the right thing, it can also lead to them being injured, and as your report said earlier, and sued civilly.
Shane, have you given that some thought, that the guy that you're meeting up with may be packed and loaded?
Absolutely. In fact, we, myself and my partner Scott, who is also a decoy, we think about that wholeheartedly. I've actually had officers speak to me for several hours regarding this, and almost in a training aspect of speaking, but without saying they train me. I am fully knowledgeable in the fact of entrapment versus enticement versus just basic them. The ad that's placed is called catfishing. It's not illegal to catfish. When you catfish, we place an ad, 16-year-old female looking to hang out. That's when you decipher, is this person a predator, is this person, you know, because if they're an individual, they're going to flag it. Nobody wants that, you know, to see that up in an adult's platform. However, when that person does make that phone call on the decoy phone number that we do have, it is logged. We do have it logged through the different platforms that we use. We use Craigslist, we use different ones, and they are logged through email.
Right,
That
but
gets
if you're
turned in.
not working with law enforcement along with the process, I would imagine a defense attorney would have a field day in terms of picking it apart.
And that's where the problematic does come in. But we do have CIs that work on our team who are registered with different counties. And those CIs, okay, they are admissible evidence holders. Those people that put this to the table, that's
So
admissible evidence.
are you saying that you are working with some law enforcement agencies?
Absolutely, absolutely. Not currently have we done any busts or any stings
Which
with law
agencies?
enforcement? Nobody. I'm actually not at liberty to say. In fact, it was one thing that they asked me not to do, especially having CIs on my team. CIs are civil informants. The agency, Hillsborough, we are not working with Hillsborough County. They made it adamant to say we do not want anything to do with this because of the problematic causes. The thing is, now I understand on the law enforcement end and the fact that, you know, it does, you know, come into entrapment and this and that. On a father, on a parental end, and I'm not an officer, and I can respect the fact that that's what you guys are doing, but I am doing this because that this person might not be searching. We've outed them,
We only have a
and
few
then we've informed law enforcement.
We only have a few seconds left in this segment, but does this happen anywhere? Are there law enforcement agencies out there working with private individuals unconnected to law enforcement to do this kind of work?
I've known law enforcement agencies that have folks like Shane in their communities that do, whether it's online predators or other criminal activity in their community, that have worked together with the law enforcement agency. But in most time, the law enforcement agency tries to eventually win it to their domain and keep it in-house because of...
Yes. All right, we have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. And our guests join us right now for final thoughts. So, Greg, you've heard what Shane is doing. Yes. What's your conclusion?
Well, what I'd like to make a point is the prevention aspect. You know, we're talking about proactive. We don't want to investigate reactively after something happened. Shane brought up something good. He talked about going on his daughter's phone and looking at the apps that she had and see what she's doing. Parents have got to do that. They got to be involved more in the child's connection with social media, because there's various problems, and this is one of them. Education in the school, to make it very clear these things are out there, you know, these predators are out there and things can happen. So I'd like people to focus on the prevention aspect of it.
So, Kurt, briefly, if you are part of a chat room on Facebook or whatever, and it's legitimate, but you see suspicious activity, what should you do?
Well, you know, we're really blessed in the state of Florida, and even here locally in the Sarasota, Bradenton area, in that our law enforcement officers here are well trained through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. They go through a lot of training for that. So it's striking that right balance between education, as Greg said, and enforcement.
All right, Shana, and I'll give you the final word. We only have a couple of seconds left, but having heard what the experts say, does it give you some kind of pause?
I've actually already had that pause. This isn't the first time I've spoken to professionals like this. I've had the pause. What we do, and if you see what we do online by checking out the Ultimate Decoy on Facebook or Prank Call Mafia, you'll see that all of our busts, when I say busts, we're not arresting, but that's what we call it, they're done in a matter to where there is no entrapment, there is nothing else negative, and they're done in a way to where this person, they do give a confession majority of the time,
Right.
and they're outed.
We have to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show on what impact Puerto Ricans moving to Florida may have on future elections. Tens of thousands of Puerto Ricans moved to Florida after Hurricane Maria. If they register to vote in Florida, it can have a huge impact on not only just the Suncoast, but the entire Sunshine State. We went to Facebook to hear your thoughts, and Ian says, I hope they all get registered to vote. Diane says President Trump gave everything possible for the recovery efforts. Puerto Rico's government is crooked and corrupt and don't care about their people. Patrick responds, wow, this comment made me volunteer to get them registered. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, that's because it's expired. Just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Shane Coyle, Greg Arnold, Professor of Criminal Justice at State College of Florida, and Kurt Lavarello, Executive Director of the School Safety Advocacy Council.